Hey everyone, it's your girl Angie Winder here again on the RTV radio show. Anyone doesn't know, the RTV stands for Restoring the Village Project. We are here each and every Tuesday doing just that, restoring our village. We're here also spotlighting different people in the community as well as offering a positive dialogue for hot topics. And with me today, we're going to be talking about a hot topic, and we're going to be talking about should school police be armed. I want to thank my guest. He's a special guest since it's his second time on, but we want to thank Sergeant Clyde Bowright for coming on the show, and we're going to talk about this. It's going to be, I did a poll, and it's 60-40. We had some that said yes, 60% actually said yes, 40% said no, and we had some comments and questions. I do want to encourage you all to interact with us today. You can always call in. The phone number is 404-436-1277. Again, the phone number is 404-436-1277. Again, thank you, Sergeant Bowright, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I do know that there's a public forum coming up this Thursday. Can you talk about that? And could you also just kind of go right into why you believe that officers should be armed?
So coming up on Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m., between 6 and 8 at 200 East North Avenue at Baltimore City School Headquarters, there's going to be a public forum to discuss the topic of should school police officers be armed. The genesis of that goes back to the 2016 legislative session where there was an attempt to put a piece of legislation in to close the loophole in an old antiquated law to allow school police officers, and I want to say that again, school police officers, trained and certified police officers, to have their firearms on them at all times during their tour of duty. This law, the genesis of the law, it goes back to, in Baltimore, we used to have something called the Special Police Program. It goes back to the 70s or 60s. Places like the Baltimore Arena, which used to be called the Civic Center, had their own special police force. The Convention Center, Giant Food, Mass Transit Administration, which is MTA, all of these, and Baltimore City Schools, all of these different organizations had a group of security personnel that were trained and had arrest powers on the property of their responsibility. In 1967, Baltimore City School Police was created, and the goal was, initially to just have night response, where our officers will respond to the school buildings that people broke into. But things evolved in the 1970s and 80s, which led to school police officers then being assigned to schools. In 1991, then Governor William Donald Schaefer signed Senate Bill 550, which authorized Baltimore City School Police to move away from being a security organization to a full-service police department, and that occurred in 1991. 91. Okay. So if you go back to the genesis of that bill, our officers would then, and if you look at like places like Enoch Pratt Library, still has special police, but they go through the police academy. I know when I went through the police academy and I worked at another police agency, we had 3 members of the Enoch Pratt Library in the police academy with us. So you go through all of the training that is required by the state of Maryland to become a police officer. And Baltimore City School Police switched in 1991 to becoming a full-service police department, which allowed them to, get patrol cars, respond lights and siren, and different things like that. So,
hello.
I'm sorry. It sounds like we. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So, we have certainly evolved over time with the citywide radio system, where we own a radio system with all of the other city agencies, and that's Watershed Police, all 9 Baltimore City police districts, the Baltimore City Sheriff's Office. At one time when Housing Authority police officers were available, when that agency was up and running, we all were on the same radio system, so we could communicate with each other. We saw, with bad communications, what can happen on 9/11, and how. And so 9/11, we go back to that day. From 9/11 till late 2016, our officers carried their weapons every day without fail,
right,
throughout the process.
So it looks like we do have an incoming caller. Hello, caller. You're on. This is Angie.
Hi, Angie. This is Melissa Schober.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Good afternoon, Ms. Schubel. Good evening.
I'm well.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Okay, I'm doing great. You have a question for us?
No, I told you I would call in to talk about the school police. I was one of the parent advocates.
Okay.
Who worked on this issue back in 2015 and 2016.
Okay.
So the assertion that officers carried their weapons every day in 2016 is either false or against the law. The statute that exists in the Maryland Education Code that was created in 1991 and signed into law by Governor Schaefer prohibits school police officers from carrying their weapons unless they've been permanently assigned to a building. And that statute remained unchanged. The bill that went down to defeat HB 101 and SB 17 would have amended the state statute, but if officers were carrying in contravention of that law, that's quite concerning indeed.
Yes. I'm sorry, I kind of like lost you. Did you? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, okay. So did you have a comment on you said the 1991 of them being prohibited from?
Yeah, so that bill, that bill that she's referencing, the Senate Bill 550, inside of that bill, there was not a change, and she is correct. There was no change to the statute that allowed a police officer to carry a weapon, but however, it was later amended, and the times were changed. So there has been an amendment to this statute. Later on, I want to say it was back in maybe 2002, 2001. There was an amendment to change the time, so it went from a designated time like 8 and 4 or 7 and 3 to allow police officers to carry their guns during intake and during dismissal, and that's for police officers that are permanently or temporarily assigned to schools.
Okay.
But so, not in the building. But not in the building.
Is that true? Not in the building?
Permanently assigned to a school.
Okay.
If an officer is assigned to a school, it has to be assigned to a school. And that's the key statement.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But without the permanent assignment, they could not carry weapons in the building.
Well, I think that your interpretation of the law is incorrect, but that's your interpretation. My
interpretation agrees with the NAACP, LDS, and the ACLU, and other groups and attorneys who've taken a look at the statute, and that's part of the reason that the Baltimore City School Police are included in the consent decree with the Department of Justice. Okay.
And, if we can talk about the consent decree and things like that, but I thought the topic of the day was dealing with school police officers with carrying weapons. And I understand that, I encourage you to continue to be an advocate, just like I'm advocating for the police officers that are charged with this responsibility of ensuring safety for students. That's my job, and it's your job to advocate for your child and, the other 80,000 students. They have their parents to advocate for them as well.
So, Melissa, thank you for your comment. I did receive information that you provided, and I will read up on it. And hopefully I'll see you all on Thursday. But thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so it was an amendment.
Yeah, there was an amendment.
So we'll look into that. I mean, this is good stuff because these are things that we don't know. And you basically said they would have to be assigned to the school. So, yes, the way we interpret. All right, so if you fast forward, if you rewind back to 2016 when the bill, it wasn't defeated. I want to clear that up. That bill was just not moved through the Baltimore City delegation. There was never a vote taken by the city delegation, a public vote, which is required by Maryland law. It just wasn't. It didn't come out of the drawer. That happens with bills all the time. You get 2,000 bills or 3,000 bills a year, and some bills just don't make it out the drawer. The school system was charged with the responsibility of doing their due diligence by having conversations with the community, and they sat on it for a few years. School shootings have become a national trend. And now with so many school shootings,
I think the Baltimore City school system is realizing that this is an issue that they have to get out in front of. And I also will say this, which is very, very, very key. Under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, it's the Equal Protection Act. 23 other jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. There's 24 total. The 23 other jurisdictions have armed police officers. It's the Baltimore City schools children who do not have that protection. And just like, the previous caller said that they're advocating for their child, I personally have talked to a group of parents that have filed a lawsuit in the federal courts to have this school system answer to the federal courts about why they're not providing the same protections that the other students are getting throughout the state of Maryland. And that's something that they have to answer for.
So you're saying Baltimore City is
the only one. It's the only jurisdiction in the state of Maryland without armed police officers during the school day.
So one of the questions that came in, I don't remember the name. I was getting so many questions, which was good. This is a good thing. But one of the questions is just, and it could be incorrect or not, but they asked, why should the school system have its own police force when other jurisdictions use a detailed MOU? So is it just that Baltimore City has their own force?
So,
what's the difference between...
All right, so if you look nationally, if you look at most big cities, they all have a school police department. You look at Los Angeles, you look at Miami, you look at Cleveland, you look at Pittsburgh, New York City, all of these other police, they have their own police force in the school system. That's not unique to Baltimore. So that question, there's a certain amount of responsibility that's charged with a police officer that polices the street. And there's also a different style of policing for a person that's primarily responsible for policing children. I think the previous caller and their groups used this as a platform to talk about arrest data. And we've changed the way that we do business. The arrest numbers are no longer high. I mean, the stats are what they are. You look at the 3-year trend, we're not arresting kids for disorderly conduct at the rate we used to. We had to change business, the way we did business.
And how are you changing? What are some things that you're changing?
There's intervention. There's a number of different, we divert things to different programs as opposed to arrest. So there's other options. And I think that, we took a look in ourselves in the mirror, and we as a organization, we have evolved. I mean, the parents call for a certain type of police officer, and that's what they've been getting. I mean, there's been 2 years since we had a complaint at the Civilian Review Board for excessive force. Show me a police department in the state of Maryland doing that. I mean, so we have had the courageous conversations amongst ourselves on how we're going to change the way we do business. And we had also to have some conversations with some of our former coworkers. Hey, if you're not going to change with the times, then this may not be the place for you. And some of them have made the decision to vote with their feet and go elsewhere. So I think that as a police department, and I want to make this very, very clear, we're not there to criminalize students. In fact, we're not people that just moved here. Before we went on there, I talked about me being a student at Lamell Middle School. I went to Matthew Henson Elementary School in West Baltimore. I grew up in the 1500 block of Appleton Street. My family still lives there. So we're not people that just showed up to Baltimore and want to change the world. We've been here. We just had a bill passed in the legislature and also in the Baltimore City Council to, for police officers that live in Baltimore City. When you look at us, we have almost 70% of our police officers are Baltimore City residents with Baltimore City School Police. So we're engaged in making the city better.
So and I guess this is going back to that same question. So there is no detailed MOU to govern well,
there is.
There is.
All right. Okay. So when we talk about the consent decree, because that's where that question comes from. After the civil unrest in 2015, Baltimore City Police was strapped. And when I say strapped, all of their resources were tapped out. People were tired. So they asked for assistance. Other agencies, the Baltimore City Sheriff's Office, Baltimore City School Police, we all pitched in and said, we're cops. We want to help patrol this city. The murders started to increase, so we started working the Eastern District Police Department, Police District, as overtime. And we worked it from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. There was a time when the consent decree monitors were there. There were some questions asked, and people did not have the answers. such as if there was a complaint involving a school police officer and a city police officer, who handles the complaint? Is it Baltimore City IID? Is it the school police have their own IID? And those different questions. And I don't think that the people that there was some ambiguity on how those type of situations should have been handled. So that's the only 1.5 page that we got in the whole consent decree. So to say that we're a part of this 162-page document, we got 1.5 pages, and it was about the ambiguity on who will handle a complaint if the two agencies were involved.
Well, I need to do my homework and look at that.
Sure.
So, yeah, well, you sent it to me. And that kind of goes to one of the questions. It was, I kind of got a little bit of it, but why should school police be exempt from civilian oversights when they are in a civilian governed role in city schools? But you're saying that they're not exempt. They actually, okay.
No, we
report,
I would like just as the city charter states, we are a police department in Baltimore City, and we are held responsible by the Civilian Review Board.
Okay.
And we have not had a complaint of excessive force in 2 years.
Okay. Well, I know that I used to be the PTA president at Maryville, and Maryville is one of those schools that are assigned with school police, and they've done a great job there.
Thank you.
That's one thing I could say. I mean, going over and beyond not just police in the school, but things that were needed with the students, just being, I don't even want to say a friend, but just being there to know kind of that, like that first responder. And it's not to take away, because I know a lot of the questions, I try to put it all into one, but a lot of the questions were like, why are we replacing, counselors for school police? And that's not the case. And in fact, I personally am not against it. I do think just making sure that everything is in place with that and training and so forth. But I'm not totally against it. And I'm also stating that we need both. I'm not saying get away with, from the counselors, but in a lot of instances, they will be more adjusted to talking to you versus a counselor. And that's just, I don't know if it's the black community or not, but when you talk about counseling and therapy, it's just kind of like we shy away from that.
Well, what I'll say, it's been my experience when I was a school-based officer. I had a great relationship with the counselor that was there. Right. Some of my students that had issues with juvenile justice back then, the probation officers, we all had a great, it was like a big circle. Yeah, it was a wraparound service.
Now we have another caller. This is good. I love it.
Question, not.
Oh, question. I'm sorry. A question.
Why do you feel that school police need to be armed?
Okay, so that's a really, really good question, and I want to answer it.
Yep, look at that. That was the first one, but we just kind of dived in with a call.
So, in Baltimore, we have some new technology called ShotSpotter, and it's Baltimore City Police uses that technology. And with ShotSpotter technology, it can pinpoint the location where a gun has been discharged, the precise location. We're just a little over 30 days of school. We've had 8 ShotSpotter detections of a gun being fired within a 2-block radius of a Baltimore City school during the school day. So if you look at the national trend,
I look at the front.
I'm sorry. I was trying to ansser this question.
I know. But that's a caller.
This is from the chat room. This is
This is a chat room.
Okay. And if you look at 8 different situations within 30 days, when a person fires a gun, they're looking to get away. And one of the safest places to hide is in a school. So I want to kill this misconception that our officers want to have guns in order to police children, to shoot children, and things like that. That could not be further from the truth. Our officers want to be able to protect children in the event that we have a mass casualty incident, such as a school shooting. School shootings are on a rise nationwide. We've had one in Maryland. In fact, it happened during the General Assembly session, and it forced the General Assembly to change the way that they do business and offer up money to all of the jurisdictions in order to have beefed up resources. In Baltimore City, I can't see where we've taken advantage of that, but I know other jurisdictions added additional layers because of this trend of school shootings and mass shootings.
Now, I do. So I hear some people that support it strictly off of just what's going on now. And a lot of people kind of go back to some past incidents, and I think you know where I'm going because you see the article. But can you talk about and I won't even go into the actual incident. So a couple years ago, we had an officer in school that put his hands on a child.
Yes.
Now, if they had a gun, I don't know if he did or not, but
he had his gun.
Okay, I'm about to say, do you think like that can kind of tick off that person and edge a person off to pull his weapon? So the reason I say that is not to bring up that incident, but to say what kind of training would be in place to avoid any of those things happening.
All right. So with de-escalation, which is a required training that our officers go through, sensitivity training. One of the trainings that we went through.
Is this mandatory?
Well, I mean, it's mandatory for
it
school
police.
Yes, and our officers have gone through the training, and the incident in question. Just like every profession, there are people who make poor choices within every profession. There's no perfect profession out there, and we got to get away from this notion that police officers are robots. That gentleman who is no longer a police officer made a decision. And he reacted based on somebody spitting on him. I can clearly say that somebody spat on him because that's what came out in trial. I mean, this was evidence in a trial. He was spat on and he reacted, and the video was edited to only capture his reaction as opposed to the spitting. He did what he felt as though was right, and he was criminally charged, and the judicial system took care of that. So to move on from that, we can keep hounding and say that all of us are bad because of the decision of one person, and I think that would be wrong. Yes. I mean, and I use this. There's a local health institution that had someone victimize hundreds of people within our region. People didn't stop going to get medical treatment there because of the acts of that person who eventually killed himself. The stain wasn't left on the rest of the employees that stayed and had to work in that environment afterwards. So I think, like I said, the criminal justice system handled that. He's moved on with his life, and he answered to the law for what happened.
So I agree with that one. I just think police in general, the community and police is just, we got to bring it back together.
Absolutely.
And I
totally agree.
And I think that's what's really changing things and people mindsets or hesitation for that to happen. So I have another question. There's a whole lot of it. First of all, I want to go back to my poll. My poll was the same question: should officers be armed? Again, it's about 60%. I haven't checked it again, but about 60% said yes, 40% said no. I want to highlight some of the things that were stated for the yes and no. One person said yes, that school police need to be armed in order to provide adequate safety for our children. Yes, I absolutely believe they should have them at all sectors of the school and in main office to secure safety of all students and staff. Then we have two, I have to do neutral.
Sure, absolutely.
We have two no's. No, it makes the students feel intimidated. Students can't concentrate with that. And the other person said no, police officers in schools being armed would spell disaster. Great chance of them acting too quickly and harming someone innocent. I kind of went to the article. But I do want to say, how do you feel about, or your take about students being or feeling intimidated about officers being into school?
So I draw
yes
this analogy.
Yeah.
Or is it a yes or no?
I was kind of like, do you think that even is going on?
I think it's possible. I think it's kind of overhyped because students, kids are very resilient. A child doesn't tell his parent, I can't enjoy Disney because I walked through BWI Airport and I saw the police officer at the airport terminal with an automatic rifle. that happens. If you go to BWI Airport, you go past the checkpoint, there's an officer standing there with an AR-15 rifle. People don't stop going to the movie theater because there's an armed police. I just could not watch Spider-Man because that police officer was standing out there with a gun. So I think that when people say these type of things, a student should understand that the gun is a tool. It's no different than a firefighter with an axe. It's no different than anybody from another profession that needs a tool.
Okay, sorry about that. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
How you doing? This is Conway. To be exact, Tony Khan, a fellow radio on fire guy.
I can't hear.
Can you hear me?
Okay. I think it's just me being old. I can't hear.
No, so I'm watching, and I definitely do agree that officers need to keep a weapon because, for the simple fact, they're human as well, and you cannot match, someone else with a human reaction that have a weapon. I just feel as though that they want to go home to their family too. So a lot of people are going to take advantage of an officer knowing that they don't have a weapon. So you definitely put them in a position that they're now going to have to do other things that's going to save them. So
Absolutely.
I think they should have a weapon. Like an officer without a weapon is basically a person that's looking to be attacked. That's a security guard.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I always say that an unarmed police officer is just another victim. And that's
100%. And especially in this city, he's going to be a 100% victim.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for calling.
And I want to point out something. Gentleman makes a great point when you talk about an unarmed police officer. That sends a message. Just like in another 60 days, we're all planning to make dinner on a Thursday night in November, for Thanksgiving. But someone's at home right now planning the next school shooting. That's just the reality of it. And you know what? We've been in the news so much. I hope and pray every day that it does not touch us.
I'm going to put him out.
I'm sorry. There you go.
It's all right.
I was trying to decline the call. Someone was calling. I apologize. But someone is somewhere right now planning the next school shooting, and that's the unfortunate part about our society. And here, look, in Baltimore, the USA Today said Baltimore is the most dangerous city in the world. But yet, in 2018, we have a police department walking around with empty holsters for a part of their shift.
So there are some, this is a good one because they got comments, people calling in. Someone said, Angie, school police can do what you admire they do without guns. No one is asking them to leave the school. And I guess that goes back to that caller, not being able to, properly secure the school. So thank you for
here's a real life scenario. The particular school that you were PTA is in close proximity of another Baltimore City school when we had a armed robbery. The call came out on the radio, person with a gun just robbed a student. The officers from your former school attempted...
It's still my school, okay?
But I'm not going to say names. But the officers from your former school attempted to go and retrieve their weapons out of the safe in order to get in to the pursuit. But the safe malfunctioned and their guns were locked in the safe. So it wasn't until a maintenance man had to come later on and break the safe open for them to retrieve their guns. So that was two police officers that were unavailable. Just imagine if this was a real live scenario where someone was actively shooting and these officers couldn't get the guns out of the safe.
Wow. Now, this is going to kind of go to a question that someone has. it said Miss Angie. Don't call me Miss Angie. Miss Angie asked the gentleman, how well prepared is the school police for an active shooter situation? And do they have anything in place if such an event will occur? That's why I believe they should be armed. I mean, the more situations than just that.
So it's a requirement of our police department that each one of us go through active shooter, real live gun shooting training with Baltimore City SWAT. I mean, it's a really, really intense day of training. I've gone through it, and every other police officer has gone through it. And we know, and the way that they did it was really, really good. They had Baltimore police, like regular patrol officers, SWAT officers, and school police officers all training together. So if we have an active shooter situation, everybody knows what the other person's going to do. And there's no patch, there's no badge, we're police, we're going to neutralize the threat. And we do have a plan in place that if that happens, we're going to respond. And you know, the cavalry's coming.
I saw
the cavalry's coming. But you know, the first people that are there are going to go and try to neutralize the threat.
Now another another comment or question, should I say, came from Amy. What about all the police that have not had to answer to the law? What's been? I mean, I guess other than the consent decree, the training, what other things are in place? I guess would be mandatory for officers to have to answer to some of the things that they are doing. And I know you said it hasn't been any big issues, so I guess it might be like a hard question.
So I've been defending cops as a union president for 11 years, and I can tell you, it's been my experience that the one group of people that police officers don't want to talk to is internal affairs. Let's just be real about it. There are other cops that investigate cops. You just don't want to talk to them. You know, for anything. You just don't want to be called down there. You don't want that stigma over your career. You don't want to be accused of something that you did or didn't do. You just don't want to go through that process. And so I do know that I've seen this process work. I've seen the internal affairs process work. I've seen unbiased investigators say, yes, that person did something wrong and they need to be held accountable for it. I've seen investigators say, no, I don't see anything here, and that officer needs to be clear because there's no corroborating evidence. But I've seen officers fired for things that they have been accused of doing, and I've also seen officers criminally charged. So the process works. You know, let's just be real. The process works.
This is a long question. I don't know if I'm gonna answer it, but let's see. I actually went back to the 23 other counties. All right, so I'm gonna get back to that. I'm gonna see if I can bring that long question down. But I do have a few others. Why? And I don't know if this is true or not. This is just one of the questions. Why should school police have their personal records shielded from public view?
So it's just like any other profession. Personnel records are that. They're personnel records. You know, law enforcement officers, if, you know, it's a requirement in some places that the police departments post the discipline. They only can post a case number and the fact that a person was disciplined. But getting into whether, you know, it's Officer Winder has been accused of something, you know, it's almost like a criminal record. You know, if you've been accused of something and found not guilty, should you be, you know, held as though you're guilty for the rest of your career? No, I don't think so. I think, you know, we are a city of second chances. I mean, you know, people are accused of stuff that they did not do or that they did, and you know, people have to pay a penalty for it. And if they, you know, pay a penalty and move on, why do we need to, you know, go back to trying to embarrass someone for something that they might have did? You know, and really, I must say this. I'm a stickler for this with police discipline. It should be swift and it should be just. Meaning, let's not belabor it for 2 years. If you got evidence that someone did something committed a crime or you know, violated a policy, bring the evidence forward and give them the punishment that's, you know, goes along with what the allegation is. Don't, you know, we're not trying to kill an ant with a sledgehammer. However, you know, give them the punishment. Do it and do it quick. Let's not drag it out.
So that question that I'm going to bring down, basically, What supports do we need? And I guess we can kind of both elaborate on it, but what supports do we need for students, families, and teachers so school police don't need to be armed? And
danger in a child. You know why? You know why I know that's, look, it's clear that for some reason the decision makers think that it's better to feel safe than to actually be safe. Just the look of a uniform is supposed to be intimidating. So they rather, I feel safe. Oh my God, I feel safe. But are you actually safe? I can tell you, a few weeks ago, outside of North Avenue headquarters, there was a domestic situation to where a person fired a gun in front of 200 East North Avenue. The first people that responded to that were school police officers. You know what? Just think if they had to run and find their gun at a safe and then try to turn around. And you know what? It was dozens of employees outside from North Avenue. So much so that the highest level, the chief of staff, sent out an email and offered grief counselors and all kinds of resources because they saw someone get shot at outside. And these are adults. But it was the school police officers that responded to that. Right. So let's be real. If you look at every area of society, we protect our judges with police officers. We protect our court system. We protect our politicians with police officers. Why leave our most precious jewels? Absolutely. Our most precious jewels are our students.
Yeah, right.
Why should they be subject to any lesser protection that you would give a judge, a politician, an athlete? Why should they be subject to that?
One thing that I like, we can kind of, I don't want to say go away from it. We're going to still be talking about it. But one thing I do like is that wraparound service. That not only the wraparound service of having your counselor, your principal, even a principal at Marvel, even though he's gone.
Great man.
He is. He's my friend. But even with he had in place, he had his counsel, he had his connection with the school police, he had it with either Northeast District, he had it with parents, he had it with alumni. It was a wraparound service there where everyone felt like they were apart, not only apart, but safe. A lot of the things that were going on, which they had a lot of robberies with, with our students. Nothing on school grounds.
Correct.
Hardly. I'm not talking about fights. I'm talking about actual someone getting, armed robbery or anything in the school. No, absolutely not. Not only did that not happen in the school, but the respect for the school police was tremendous, and it still is. If someone's walking, I won't name any officers, but if an officer's walking down the hall, the students, they knew to give that person respect.
So when I started 15 years ago, the officer assigned to Mervo, he's still there, and I'll say his name because he's a great officer. Officer Lanzi.
Yes,
was one of
Lanzi.
Was one of the officers that showed me the way. There's officers like Officer Cofield that was at Douglas for a long time. There's Officer Lancaster. These guys have been around. And they actually showed us younger guys that came in the door the way that you build those relationships. You have those relationships with the students. You have those relationships with the staff. And, I had a great relationship. At one time, I was the only officer assigned to Carver. That was my alma mater where I went to school. I grew up in the neighborhood. I lived there for 20 years in the neighborhood. It wasn't, all the time Officer Boatwright and things like that. People literally would call my mother and say, tell your son to call me because these kids hanging out around back and things like that. So the community had those kind of relationships, with the officers. And if you look at our officers, they, not only are they charged with the responsibility of protecting students, our officers go above and beyond. We serve as coaches. We serve as mentors. If you look at Corporal Betty Covington's GEMS program, that's a model program when you talk about intervening with young ladies and teaching them how to be ladies and build their credit and become productive citizens. That's a model program. So, and these are school police officers that are overseeing these type of things. We had a camp that Corporal Katrina Merritt had over the summer. We've partnered with a New Psalmist Baptist Church. We had programs where it was a free camp. Kids went free. And this camp was, our officers were the directors. And so we've done everything. We've gone above and beyond the call of duty to act that we've been asked. You know, and people that are close to me know that I hate the whole dancing cop theory. I think that, you know, you're supposed to be a police officer. I don't like the dancing cop, but that's a personal preference.
I was gonna say,
it's a personal preference.
But you have some that, I mean, because I share some of the videos when I see, especially like elementary schools. That does a lot because you don't have to be intimidated by an officer.
If you want to follow someone,
Black.
Sergeant Black.
Yeah.
That is, look, Sergeant Black, and I just tagged him too. He is excellent with that. He does an excellent job. He gets the buy-in. That is what our program is about.
Yes.
If you look at what he's doing, that's being done. And the one thing I will say this, I must say this because I would be remiss if I didn't say this. For a long time, there was no way to chart what we were doing when we were doing those things. There was no way to write that down, to tell people that we were acting as coaches. Right. You know, so it wasn't until we had to have courageous conversations to say, you know what, we need to tell our story because we're the best kept secret in Baltimore. And so now that story is being told and people are saying like, man, you know, these guys are okay. And I think the reason why we're revisiting this, because people have seen the change. We're not the big bad wolf that everybody portrayed us to. It's a small group. And again, I thank them for their advocacy. It's a small group. They can throw all the acronyms and all. It's the same core group of people that are talking about different issues. And you know what? They're the same core group of people that were on the school system about the heating. They were the same core group of people who were on them about the air conditioner, and they were on them about us. It's the same group of people. And I applaud their advocacy. Keep on. Keep on.
Now, what can people expect on Thursday?
Well, honestly, I don't know. We danced to this tune before.
Okay.
And you know, we presented our case, and the school system.
So in the article it says that Baltimore City School Board revives the question, so they're going to be bringing it back up, but we're not really sure exactly, but rather for or against. We want to make sure that everyone knows and can also just play your role. You know, if you are for it, if you're against it, come on out, let people know why. That is, having positive dialogues just as this evening is the best thing you could do. I also like to let people know what meetings are going on. Like next week is City Council. I'll be there. But want people to know what topics are up for discussion, things that could be passed or not passed because of your presence there, or your testimony. So we have to make sure that testifying, if in my case Mervo has a great opportunity and a great model, then testify to that notion that they're doing a great job. There's no one there pinning no one up on the wall, but then I also understand why some may feel that they should not be in there. So I like listening to a lot. And
we certainly
people.
Respect that. We certainly respect those that are against it, and for their reasons. And I just think that we need to really, really focus on safety. And the last thing we need is to have a mass casualty incident. Unfortunately, I had the unfortunate opportunity to be present with the 2 students that were killed in a Baltimore City school. And I told this story before the school board. The incident that happened at the Lamel campus and the incident that happened at Renaissance Academy. I had that unfortunate opportunity to be there. And one of the students I had a personal relationship with, and to see a student that came to school for that day to learn and never return, that's something that it sticks with you for your whole career. And our officers are the guys and girls that go out and want to be that barrier so that a student can go home. They want to be that. And I think that we should have all of the tools necessary available at our disposal, and that everyone should support our school police officers because we've done everything that was asked of us.
Now, are you working closely with the school counselors?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, that's, and again, I don't want people to get this, misconception that, a few years ago, the same small group of parents, they talked about a $12 million budget. And then it was, we got a $7 million budget. the $7 million budget, they, arming police as opposed to counselors. The school system is a $1.3 billion budget.
I don't say billion. Yeah.
Billion with a B. Do you think, do you really think that a $10 million budget is really hurting, putting a dent in a $1 billion budget? $1.3 billion budget? It's not. So to say that if we're taking resources away from something else, and I think that's, a little bit of fear mongering and putting a little yeast in the story that shouldn't be there.
All right.
We got another call?
I know you brung all the energy. Let's see. We're gonna see if we did. Oh yeah, we could. So we do have another caller. Thank you all for this engagement. Hello, caller. You're on the air. This is Angie.
Hi, Angie. How are you? This is Bessie.
I'm sorry. Say who?
Bessie.
Betsy. How are you?
Hello.
I'm great. Hi. How are you?
I'm doing well.
That's good. I have been on air with you guys, looking at your live, and for one, I have nothing against the good police officers, but I am fully against the ones who treat our children, us as adults, and there's something we have to look at that because our children is looking at that. Yes. And respect goes a long way. So if our children, which I'm only speaking because I have a teen, okay, I have a teen that's in high school. And when I moved back to Baltimore and realized that my son had to walk through a metal detector just to get to his lunch area, and the officers are there. So just FYI, there are schools already that do have Baltimore City police officers that are already stationed there with guns. And like you said earlier, that is very intimidating for our children. No, they do not feel safe. They don't feel safe at home. Why should they feel safe in school? And at home, the parents are there to protect them. In school, the school is supposed to be their parent when they're not home with their parent. And the police is a non-comforting for our children. Let's just be honest. They're on the internet more than we are. Majority of what's happening in today's society is to our children. So I do not think that these officers should be, these school police should be able to carry any kind of weapon.
Okay.
No gun.
Okay.
No gun.
All right.
Yeah, mace is fine, even though that's deadly as well, but I'll take mace before a gun any day. No one has that amount of training how to break up a fight or a brawl, whatever you want to call it, inside of the school system. I think that they would go with the same tactics that they go with outside the streets. That's what they were used inside of the school system. Okay. Because I think because these school police and transit police has already been given more authority than they had a few years ago, and they're doing it now. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask you, are you aware that, Baltimore City School Police has been around since 1967?
Yes, my father was one, rest his soul.
And thank him for his service. As a school police officer, you're charged with the responsibility of ensuring safety. If we look at our mission statement, is to provide a safe and secure learning environment for staff and students and guests.
Yes.
All right. Safe and secure. The only way that you can provide a safe and secure learning environment is to be able to handle the worst threat imaginable. And that, in this case, is an active shooter. And again, we talked about the statistics about how Baltimore is the most dangerous city in the world. We talked about the 8 shot spotter locator incidents this school year in 30 days. 8 where a gun was fired within a 2-block radius of a Baltimore City school. These are real statistics. And the worst thing that we can have is a police officer standing there with the empty holster, and he had an opportunity to stop someone who was there to harm a child. That's the worst feeling, to be helpless. That would be,
absolutely,
you know, if you had the ability to stop a person, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an active shooter. It could be an active stabber. It could be an active, what we call it in our profession is an active assailant. Because a person with a baseball bat is just as dangerous as a person with a .40 caliber.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we've had incidents recently, and, you know, we can go back in the last school year where we had parents fighting with aluminum baseball bats at school,
yes,
to where one of my officers took a baseball bat off a parent at Douglas High School who was there to fight a student. These are real stats.
So trust me, I truly believe you. I wholeheartedly understand. That never happened to me. I thank God daily that my son does not go through that. But when Baltimore City School, back to what you first initially said when you first spoke on is things that 8 shots that happened in I guess I'm not for sure exactly.
Like a 2-block radius of a school. Yeah.
Right. So, and what I found out when I moved back to Baltimore, because I'm from Baltimore, East Baltimore, born and raised, in Zone 18. Okay, so I came back. I left. I left because I had children. I tried to give them, you know, a chance. So then I realized I can't do that because I lived in Baltimore. I was raised in Baltimore. I survived in Baltimore. My job is to come back and help Baltimore. Now, what I realized when I came back to Baltimore, and I'm thinking I only realized this because I have middle school, high school age children, that each one of these schools are next to a project. 2 blocks from a project, 2 blocks from a zone, a no-shoot zone. Each of these schools are in the zone of danger. So it's not that, I'm not saying that it's okay. But what I'm saying is that location. So I understand, again, what you say. Yes, the school police is there to secure and keep our children, the staff, and the visitors, us as parents, safe when we are there. I totally get that, but you have to understand the students, the parents that are coming to these schools live in these neighborhoods. 9 times out of 10, it's not directed to our children. Like you said, it's 2-block. It's a radius thing. Again, it's either drug infested, gang related. You know, it's things like that I have. That's where my issue stands, and that's where I was on the lenient side to say, okay, maybe the school police can carry a baton, mace, but I do not take gun because we have Baltimore City police officers with the mace, baton, guns, and not abiding by their laws to protect us, serve us. They're hurting us. So I don't think that the as we used to call it, and everybody be honest, the mall cops, that flashlight cops, you give them guns, they're the same individuals, either went to the same school with the same people, have the same vendetta towards someone. That's what I feel is what's going on with these officers.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, sorry.
I was going to say thank you for calling because we're actually getting ready to wrap it up. But that was.
I'm sorry. Of course.
No, it's good. You make me want to have another hour. But
absolutely. Look, I have so much
Thank
to
you
say.
for your
I'm
call.
trying to type fast.
Hopefully, I'll see you. We'll see you on Thursday if you're able to come out for the public safety. I'm not saying public safety forum. The public forum.
Hold on. Yes, I will.
It's going to be at North Avenue and the school board. And you'll get more information on my page. And again, thank you for calling in.
And thank you for your call.
Absolutely.
Have a great evening.
You do the same.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow, this is why I love having this show. So thank you. We're actually getting ready to wrap the whole thing up, the whole show. But I do want to say thank you everyone for just calling in. I mean, I'm trying to get all of. I've been putting in groups so people are putting comments in. The callers, thank you for coming in again.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Baltimore City School Board, for even allowing that, because when you involve the community, that is a plus. So I truly appreciate that. I looked at some of the delegates. You have some delegates for it, some delegates against it, and this is definitely a topic that is a split.
Yes.
You know, and I understand, even with the caller, I understand. You know, we have a few school lockdowns. I mean, even one of my coworkers, her son attends Harford County school, and they were recently a couple weeks ago on lockdown.
So, you know, not to, cut you off, Harford County saw what we have in Baltimore City as our training and experience and expertise. And what did they do? They hired a Baltimore City school police sergeant to run their safety and security for schools.
Oh,
so
didn't know that one.
The gentleman out there was in January. He was a school police sergeant, and now he's running safety and security for Baltimore County, for Harford County schools, because they understand that we have the content base, the knowledge to handle these type of situations. And I think, we should not be lumped in a basket with all of the bad police officers. Right. I think that, we've shown ourselves to be unique, and we deserve to have that support.
Right. Well, again, thank you for coming on. I do want to have a couple things that I wanted to say, if I can pull it up. This thing is going slow. Again, thank you, Sergeant Clyde Bullwright, for coming on the show to talk about, again, school police being armed. Thank you for everyone that tuned in. Thank you for everyone that viewed the video, called in, made comments. We'll even try. I tagged them in the video, so even if there are some questions, maybe you can kind of answer or provide some data for it. I do want to say that this Saturday, this is my my outro. I'm always busy doing something. So let me just back it up. This Thursday, if you can just talk about the time again.
Yes, 6 to 8.
Okay.
And those that want to sign up, I think you have to be there like 4:45 to 5:30 to sign up to speak. All
right. So this Thursday, school board meeting, we're going to be talking about should officers be armed, and so please come out. It's from 6 to 8. If you want to sign up, you have to get there early. We'll try to put that information on my page as well. This Saturday is a day of action in the 43rd district. This is actually where the studio is, where I reside and where I've been elected for. So we're doing a day of action to get Ben Jealous elected. We're going to be our phone knocking on doors, phone banking, as well as we're doing some voter educational forums. One that will be over with partnership with the Better Tomorrow Starts Today, as well as Morgan State University. We will be over there registering voters, collaborating with Councilman Ryan Dorsey. I will provide all of these flyers and details on there, but it's a day of action, so we're going to have actually a meet and greet with Ben Jealous as well. So there's a few things going on this Saturday for the entire day. To get engaged, to learn about voter education, to register, and so forth. As always, if you have any questions, would like to follow up with anything that was mentioned, you can always follow my website. You can go onto the website at angiewinder.com, and all the information is on there, as well as past shows. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in each and every Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we have another special guest. I will not spill the beans yet, but she is a wonderful person, and I look forward to talking about it's not Nicki Minaj, but we're going to be talking about a serious matter, as well as celebrating her accomplishments. And sexual harassment sexual assault will be a topic of discussion, as well as domestic violence. So I look forward to seeing Marilyn and that was my little hint. So see you all next Tuesday at 6:15. Thank you.
Thank you.